Hello everyone, I hope that you're doing okay. Today we're going to cover IELTS writing, academic module, the chart interpretation, and I hope that you find it useful. I look forward to your opinion and to your ideas about this episode. Let's see together what we have. IELTS academic writing, task 1, chart interpretation. These are the governing bodies of the IELTS, which are the British Council, IDP IELTS, and University of Cambridge. The material that we use are from this book, IELTS Write Right, written by Julian Charles. It's a very good book. I recommend it to everybody. If you're going to take IELTS, this book is really going to help you. When I was taking the IELTS, I read it cover to cover, and it really helped my score. Right, so let's start. So, question 1, birth rates in China and the USA. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. It's important, everybody, because the task 2 has more points. So, I suggest personally that you stick to task 2 very good. 20 minutes is enough for this one. So, the graph below compares changes in the birth rates of China and the USA between 1920 and 2000. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So the first thing that I ask any of my candidates to do, address the task. It means do exactly as the task tells you to do. That is why some people fail in the IELTS exam, because they don't pay attention, they don't focus. So do exactly as the task tells you to do. Even if you're good at statistics, analysis, math, whatever it is, your job is to simply report. So you don't employ your own ideas, you don't analyze anything, you just report. So here's the chart, this is the year, and this is the rates. So let's see a sample answer together. Now, model answer A, IELTS band score 5+. It can secure a 6 maybe. Why? Because it does as it's told, and the format is right. When we move on, I will tell you about the format as well. Band score 5+. So this one can secure a 6 maybe. Why? Because it's loyal to the format. The format is very important. So let me read it. The figure given shows the birth rates of China and the USA between 1920 and 2000. Okay, simply rephrase the task, not bad. I don't recommend it, but it's good. If it's one sentence, if it's more than that for an introduction in chart, it's too much. Clearly, both rates fluctuated dramatically during this period. Okay, so each sentence that you write should carry a meaning. Okay, fluctuated, but it's vague. You have to write clearly. Okay, that's the first mistake. And the wording, when I see the wording is too simple, the wording has to be more advanced. China's birth rate rose from 10% in the 1920s, okay, 10% from the 1920s, to 15%, I guess talking about here, in 1935, right? Then it fell sharply to around 5% in both 1940 and 1945. It increased rapidly to a peak of 20% in 1950. After this, it fell dramatically to less than 10% in 1955. Finally, it decreased steadily to about 2% in 1980 and remained at this level until 2000. Okay, so it talked about China. Meanwhile, the US birth rate fluctuated at around 12% from 1920 to 1940. It decreased dramatically to under 5% in 1945. Next, it increased rapidly to a peak of 15% in the 1950. After 1950, it fell gradually to about 12% in the 1960s and around 7 or 8% during the last 20 years of this period. Okay, so first talk about China, then it talked about USA. What about similarities? Some information is missing here. good report, but you have to make comparisons, you have to make similarities, okay? Therefore, although the US birth rate was generally higher than the birth rate of China, especially after 1950, both birth rates followed a very similar trend. Good. So this answer is good for a 6 or a 5 plus. What do you think is the problem? As I told you, number one, the wording is too simple. And it keeps repeating the same word dramatically, percent. You know, so at peak. The same words over and over. The wording is too simple and too repetitive. So wording, and sometimes it's vague. It doesn't address the task properly because it doesn't make comparisons very relevant. It just talked about China, then talked about USA, and just said, okay, they follow similar trend, and that's it. So that is why this answer is not desirable. The desirable answer for us is this one. Model answer B, IELTS band 7+. Let's read it. A glance at the graph provided reveals some striking similarities between the Chinese and the US birth rates during the period from 1920 to 2000. Wow. Okay, so it literally told us what is the chart about indirectly. At the same time, made a comparison. It is evident that both nations saw considerable fluctuations in fertility with lows during the 1940s and highs during 1950s. So, made a very good opening with the introduction of maybe rephrasing the task and delivering information. And at the same time, you know, mapped the whole trend. Very good. Increasing from approximately 10% in 1920 to 15% in 1935, China's birth rate then plunged to a low of just 5% in the 1940s. This was followed by a period of exponential growth, with the fertility in the country reaching a peak of 20% in 1950. The latter half of the century, however, brought a sustained decline in this figure. So, okay, talked about the trend, but the wording is diverse, advanced, and the information is specific, to the point. Nice. The US birth rate, meanwhile, fluctuated at somewhere between 11 to 13% prior to the 1940, before dropping sharply to less than 5% in the 1945. The following 5 years saw a rapid climb in this rate to somewhere in the vicinity of 15% in 1950, followed by a steady fall. It is interesting to note that while the birth rates of both countries were comparable until 1950, the gap between the two widened after this time as fertility in China slid away. So addressed the United States, addressed the China, talked about the trends, talked about the similarities in trends. The wording is very good. The information is specific and up to the point. And it's just awesome. The formatting is awesome. So if you look at the format, how it opens it and how it closes it, so opens and maps the whole writing, the chart interpretation, and in the end it closes very good. Good opening, good closing, good wording, diversity in the wording. The information is specific, up to the point. There are no repetition as we had in the previous one. So this is a good answer. So let's check some good vocabulary. For example, the graph shows some similarities between the birth rates of China and the USA from 1920 to 2000. IELTS 6, the graph provided reveals some surprising similarities between the Chinese and the US birth rates during the period of from 1920 to 2000. Okay, but high ticket answer. A glance at the graph provided reveals some striking similarities between the Chinese and the US birth rates during the period from 1920 to 2000. High ticket. Or for example, sentence 2, clearly the birth rates of both countries fluctuated dramatically with lows in 1940s and highs in 1950s. It is evident that the fertility in both rates in both nations fluctuated considerably with lows during the 1940s and highs during the 1950s. But it is evident that both nations saw considerable fluctuations in fertility with lows during the 1940s and highs during the 1950s. That is how you upgrade to a higher level. So if the format is right, you can secure up to 6. But for higher score, you need to stay loyal to the format, but come up with better wording. Okay? So in this one, first, China's birth rate increased from about 10% in 1920s to 15% in 1935. Then it decreased sharply to just a 5% in the 1940s. Okay, let's upgrade it. China's birth rate increased from approximately 10% in 1920 to 15% in 1935. Then plunged down to a low of just 5% in the 1940s. Plunged. That's a good. Plunge down, plunge up. That's a good word. We will cover the vocabulary as well. So increasing from approximately 10% in the 1920 to 15% in 1935, China's birth rate then plunged down to a low of just 5% in 1940s. Good. Now, sentence 4. Then the US birth rate increased markedly to over 15% in 1950. Then there was a marked increase in the US fertility to over 15% in 1950. The US then saw a marked increase to over 15% in 1950. Why is this one better? Because it's not wordy. Too much words used to imply a simple event. So that has to be avoided. It shouldn't be wordy. The words should be diverse. The vocabulary should be advanced. These are the things that you should take into consideration while you're writing this. Now, some of the vocabulary, for example, instead of show, you can say reveal, increase, rise, climb, grow. These are chart words. Increase, rise, growth, decrease, fall, drop, decline. Sharp, dramatic, rapid, considerable, exponential, marked. Sharply, dramatically, rapidly, considerably, exponentially, markedly. Fall sharply, decrease dramatically, slide away, plunge, gradual, steady, gradually, steadily. And about. For about, you can say approximately, somewhere in the vicinity of. But somewhere in the vicinity of, it's sometimes too wordy. You have to pay attention where you use it. All right, that's it, everyone, for the writing of the chart. We have some more episodes regarding the chart. We have different charts, the pie chart, the graph, the bar chart. We will cover all of them. So every week I will upload one chart and one essay. So the next episode will be about the essay. Thank you guys for watching. Wish you all the best. Ciao.